As we all know, Andy Muschietti directed the Flash movie. And he's also tapped to direct Brave and the Bold, something that I believe is a blatant lie that was never going to happen and was only announced to uplift the box office sales of the Flash movie. Well, some of you may or may not be aware that Andy has done an interview in Argentinian. And he said some very triggering things that I find quite upsetting because they're simply not true. He's spoken about Brave and the Bold. We're going to get to that immediately, but he's also said one of many reasons the Flash flopped is because not enough people care about the character of the Flash, which is so untrue. He can't admit the real truth, but I'll get to that in a minute. He said the Flash character isn't popular and nobody cares about him, especially certain sectors of the female audience. Well, Andy, for 8 seasons, many girls and women loved the Flash TV show, and that was a very successful show. You are wrong. The Flash character is one of the most successful, popular characters in DC lore. I'm calling BS on that. Let's get to the truth. Basically, Andy Muschietti was just a studio appointed director. The reason he got to do it is because Walter Hamada, who at the time was the president of DC Films, was overseeing before that the horror franchise at New Line Cinema, also owned by Warner Brothers, WB. He didn't have a vision for the Flash. He was simply just a director. And there's 3 versions of the Flash movie, by the way. There's the version that Walter Hamada oversaw, which was supposed to be this multiverse saga, and it was going to rebrand the DCEU. And then when Abby and DeLuca became the controlling CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures, they had this idea, this is when they were going to bring Henry Cavill back, if you believe he was really ever coming back. Henry was going to cameo, Sasha Calle once the universe was reset after the Flash reset the universe and came back to Earth 1 of the DCEU. You were going to see the Flash with Supergirl, aka Sasha Calle, Henry Cavill, Wonder Woman. It was going to be great. And then there's the other version of the Flash movie that James Gunn took over. The version where we saw George Clooney as Batman. What universe that's in, what Earth's that in, we still don't know. And I can assure you, they're never going to tell us. What an absolute cluster F. But we'll continue the conversation about what he said about the Flash not being popular in a moment. Also in that interview, because things are being lost in translation because it's in Argentinian, people were saying that he said he hasn't spoken to James Gunn about Brave and the Bold for over a year. Now, the YouTuber Boba Talks did a video where he explained this is not true. Now, Boba is someone I respect. He's an inspiration. He shows what geeks and nerds can achieve as YouTubers, and that's great. I respect his passion. But he is one of these people who believes in James Gunn wholeheartedly. He believes in the DCU wholeheartedly and sometimes lacks objectivity. I'm not trying to be mean about him. He lacks objectivity when it comes to James Gunn. He wrongly trusts James Gunn. It really doesn't matter that whether Andy Muschietti and James Gunn spoke to each other yesterday or, over a year ago. That's not my issue. What I'm saying to you is that the Brave and the Bold movie has never existed. It's just a slate. It's on a slate. There's no development, there's no casting, there's no script, and Andy Muschietti was never ever going to direct that movie, and he will not be directing this movie for many reasons. As I said, they lied about him directing that movie to uplift the box office of The Flash. That is a fact. I know that for a fact. I now see Andy Muschietti as a fraud. Because when you say one of the many reasons the Flash movie flopped was because nobody cares about the Flash character, I'm calling BS on that. Anyone watching this video who knows anything about DC knows how popular the Flash character is. And I'll refer back to the Grant Gustin Arrowverse show, which was extremely popular, and the only reason it lost its popularity in latter seasons because it became creatively bankrupt. We all know that. So Andy Muschietti saying that it flopped because nobody's interested in the Flash and women are not interested in the Flash. Let me put it to you this way, Andy. If you made a great Flash movie, you would have made a lot of money. Now, we know the issues with Ezra Miller at the time and the negativity surrounding Ezra, and that didn't help the box office either. But I've seen problematic people make money on movies. For example, The Passion of the Christ is a very controversial movie that's accused of being anti-Semitic. That is one of the highest grossing independent movies of all time. And that was accused of being anti-Semitic. Braveheart is accused of being anti-British and made a lot of money. So negativity and controversy is not a good reason for a movie flopping. The reality is, with or without Ezra Miller's controversies, if that film was any good, and ironically, Ezra's performance playing two different versions of Barry Allen was exceptional and outstanding. In the end, the reason the movie didn't make any money, is because it wasn't a very good movie, because of studio interference. As I say, 3 versions of that movie, the Hamada version, the Abby and DeLuca version, then the James Gunn version. That's what happened with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. James Wan and Jason Momoa had a great vision for that sequel. And in the end, James Gunn interfered with that movie and made it a bad joke. Again, his interference didn't help. And we know that James Gunn's DP, director of photography he likes to work with, was also on the Flash movies. Also the director of photography on the Superman movie. Something we should remember for July the 11th when this Superman movie is released. But anyway, so for me, Andy Muschietti, that basically, right, you can prove if people are genuine people and good people by what they say. And Andy Muschietti saying that, the Flash movie wasn't successful because nobody cares about the Flash is nonsense. Let's look at Aquaman, one of the least popular characters in DC lore in the history of DC. And in fact was deemed as a joke. In fact, Zack Snyder phoned up a podcast of people making fun of the idea of an Aquaman movie, and Zack promised that he would make Aquaman relevant, which he did. And him and James Wan did kind of work closely together to get that to happen. And Aquaman was the most successful DCEU movie. So, to say The Flash isn't a popular character, to say that nobody cares about the Flash character and that's why nobody went, it's absolute BS. But you don't understand the efforts and lies they told to try and make a movie that had studio interference, that had 3 different versions, 3 different cuts. A cut that I saw which was pretty good, and I was excited about that movie, if you remember my videos about it before it was released, right? They got Stephen King to lie about it because Andy Muschietti and Stephen King worked together on both It remakes. So there was a connection there. So Stephen King comes out and says, it's a great movie. I don't like superhero movies, but I must admit it's a great movie. I've seen this movie. Then we had rumours that Tom Cruise met with David Zaslav and said, that's the kind of movies we need to see. Now, Tom Cruise never officially came out. There was never a quote from Tom Cruise. These were rumours. And now we know that Tom Cruise has a relationship with WB and will be making movies with WB, Warner Brothers Discovery. Call me unsurprised. And that's why Tom Cruise never came out and said, hey, I never said that. He obviously said, look, I'll never come out publicly and say it's a good movie, but if you want to use my name, that's fine. And I said this at the time. So they did. And then they actually showed the movie at CinemaCon, to influencers and pundits and critics, and they all came out and lied that it was one of the best movies in the genre. James Gunn, the co-CEO of DC Studios, said it was one of the best films in the genre. In the Inside of You podcast, from Michael Rosenbaum. He lied blatantly that it was a great movie. Go and see it. It's a great movie, one of the best movies in the genre. So, but basically, Andy Muschietti is just a studio man. He will do anything the studio tells him to do. And then we've got this issue of him apparently directing Brave and the Bold. And in this interview, he said at the moment he's committed to doing it, but the reality is there is no Brave and the Bold. And I'll keep on saying it, as boring as it is, to repeat myself, there is no Brave and the Bold, and there's certainly no Brave and the Bold movie being developed. There's no plans. They've done nothing with it. And Andy Muschietti, in the same interview, said they don't want to. Batman and Brave and the Bold, if it is released, by the way, what he's pretending it is going to be made and released, won't happen till well after the Batman 2 is released. And we've been over this as well. And I've spoken about what a bad look, the DCU is launching and we don't have a DCU Batman unless they have him cameo in other people's movies. But that's still two Batmen, right? Is that still going to confuse people? I don't know what... Look, here's the truth. They just don't know what to do with the DCU Batman now because of the existence of Matt Reeves' Batman. And how that's resolved is very interesting. Of course, if Superman flops, it won't be a problem because there really won't be any DCU. And even James Gunn has admitted that. But for Andy Muschietti not to admit that he and Warner Brothers and Gunn messed up the Flash movie and it's their fault. You see, one thing about New Hollywood, they will never admit that they're to blame. It's the fans' fault. Right, they're blaming the fans. They're basically saying, Warner Brothers spent $200 million on a film that no one was interested in. That's not the point. The reason people didn't go is because of the Ezra Miller controversies, because it was a bad movie, and it was a movie that was changed, and three times they changed the direction of that movie, and in the end, it was a mess. This is the same Andy Muschietti who came out and said the CGI was bad purposely. I don't know if this guy constantly is getting mistranslated, but it's crazy. But what I would say to Boba talks about, because he's really come out with some cope in his video about, how they have spoke, how Muschietti and Gunn have spoken about Brave and the Bold, and it wasn't a year since they last spoke, blah, 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 blah. I can assure you that that man will never direct a Batman movie. Many people have said on social media, Mick, I don't want Andy Muschietti anywhere near Batman. And I agree with you. And I don't think he was ever going to be anywhere near Batman. And this Batman, this Brave and the Bold movie isn't a reality. And even if it is, we won't be seeing it till 2028, 2029. Who knows? Maybe even 2030. This is a joke now. And James Gunn even admitted that just because you're on the slate, it doesn't mean the movie is going to be green-lit. What a joke. You have no business putting movies on slates that you've got no plans to green-light. Oh, if we don't get a good script, we're not going to green-light it. What have you been doing? Why have you got it on a slate? Shouldn't you be working with someone already? Shouldn't you have a plan for a Brave and the Bold movie? No, basically, a lot of those slates are just titles that they just put on the slate. Obviously, Superman was happening. They obviously had plans for Lanterns, right? Supergirl is shooting. From Monday, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, starts shooting. That's exciting. But if you think about it, they're going to start shooting that movie. What if Superman flops? Because despite the high views for the trailer and the fact that the trailer was pretty good, let's not forget there were rumours that they had to keep on going back to cut that trailer because the trailer was so bad. Could it be that this movie's so bad they struggled to find good sequences to put in the teaser trailer? Because you can have a great trailer for a rubbish movie. We know that. But Andy Muschietti blaming a lack of popularity for the Flash character is the most fraudulent thing I've heard in a long time. And I know that you DC fans know this is wrong and this is BS because you're DC fans and you know how great and how much potential this character has.